Hey, everybody in Facebook land. This is Paul Sterling here, and Candace is joining me. We're on the West Coast and the East Coast, and we're here to talk about the three relationship wreckers, discover what they are and how you can avoid them. So, um, I'm going to give a little bit of an introduction to, well, actually, I'll let Candace start. How did you get on this journey of being a relationship and basically also an intimacy coach, which is a unique thing to be involved in? So, what were some of the big turning points for you? And I want to see how you got here.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Um, the theme of this show is relationship wreckers. Well, yeah, I was a relationship wreck. Like I remember just very clearly even telling people like just I can't, just don't try. It's not a good idea. We can only get this close, that's safe. um and so from my own messes going on in my world, initially that's how I found my way to what a lot of us know as tantra, and to work on my own struggles with intimacy. Sorry, a piece of hair that's bugging me. Work on my own struggles with intimacy and connection. Um, and I've always had a pull towards serving. Initially, that came in. I had struggles with addiction and drugs and alcohol, and I had to start there. And so, first, it was working on that, and I worked in that field. But in the normal, societally, government acceptable treatment or healing or counseling models, there's levels of intimacy and relating and sexuality that don't really get touched upon. And that's how I found my way to worlds like you and I have danced in for my own healing. And then, of course, decided to serve there. So thank you. And I'm
So,
really happy to be here with you.
thank you, Candace. I appreciate it. And what I want people to can you connect to, like, see, I went through one divorce, four broken engagements. And what I once heard is that every master started out as a disaster. And Candace, I could relate to what you said is like, I'm at one point in my life, I was probably not good to be in a relationship with because I made all these relationship mistakes and I didn't know how to identify them. I thought rather than I was doing something wrong, I thought there was something wrong with me. And so, what I want to do today is help people see it's probably not their fault. It's probably that they're not doing it right. And there's some mistakes or problems that almost everybody does that when you address them can make a huge difference. And I ended up writing a book called Argue Less, Love More. And my website is arguelesslovemore.net. And it's all about how do you take and make a relationship remarkable, even if it's gone through jealousy, betrayals, affairs, heartbreaks, broken agreements, all the rest of that. Almost anything is repairable with the right tools. So let's dive in a little bit and look at it. And um, and I've got a question here. Somebody's asking, what's your perspective of moving from one relationship to another to another? So we will actually dive into that. And I think fear of transparency is a relationship wreck. And so we'll look at what different people want in relationships. So, by the way, we're going to be looking at comments and be interacting. So we'd love to hear where you're calling in from, and if there's something that you can relate to, like that Candace says or I say, I can relate to that. You just put your comment in there. We want it to be interactive. So, yeah, it's repairable. Here's what just got shared. It's repairable if both want to repair. Almost anything is repairable if both people want to repair and are committed to. So let's take a look at what we're looking at here. And I'm going to describe some of the slides to Candace because Candace can't see the slides. How's that for saying it, Candace? So this is the bell curve where on one side it's the beginning of a relationship and it's easy to win, hard to lose, and people are in a state of gratitude, of grateful. And as long as we stay grateful, the relationship keeps getting better and better. And when it starts curving and going down to the other side is when we start taking each other for granted, and it becomes easy to lose, hard to win. And somewhere along there is called the PONR, point of no return, relationship wreck, relationship over. All right. Candace, anything you want to say about that one?
I'm seeing the curve, and I know you have many other maps, but what the person said in the comments there about repair, there's just so many different kinds of relationships and so many perceptions, and so I see the curve is like also kind of a spiral. Depending on where and how you're playing on the relationship spectrum.
Mm-hmm. All right. And the person says if there's no gratitude, there's conflict, there's somebody calling or watching us from Sedona. So actually, I'm going to bounce down to the three problems. So I'm going to skip a couple of slides. Ooh, here we go. Before I go into the three problems, what I want to do is I've got my map out of where are you now? Where do you want to go? So on one side, on the left-hand side, is crisis. So that's another bell curve. So the way that goes, and Candace, I want you to kind of be thinking about this as I describe it. So crisis, conflict, stuck in a rut, good, great. So all the way on the left side is crisis. On the right side is a great relationship. There are 5 different zones. And I have been in all of these. And I want the people who are watching to kind of go, where are you now? Are you in crisis? And it's not just an individual crisis, but it's like the relationship is almost in a constant state of crisis, or constant conflicts is the next one, or constant to feel like it's stuck in a rut and not going anywhere. Where's your relationship good or great? So where is it now? Where do you want it to be? So even if you don't write it in the comments, just write it to yourself. Where are you now? Where do you want to be? So any comments on the bell curve? Can you identify with that, Candace?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. And I think one of the great pieces, definitely, even if right now, as to all of you watching out there, maybe you're just kind of taking this in initially, come back later, or write this stuff down so you can really allow yourself, because some of us have never met ourselves this way, never mind looked at our relationships to these degrees and be able to be this honest with ourselves. So yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just going to bounce quickly through these 5 stages so people can identify it. And so the first stage, crisis, is should I stay? Should I go? You're half in, half out, or maybe mostly out. You just haven't left yet. You've already decided. That's the state of crisis. The next step up is conflict. And in conflict, it tends to be the harder you try, the worse things get. So Shira is asking, actually, Candace is blind, so that's why she can't see the things that I'm describing. So somebody was just asking about why. So,
Yep.
all right. So that's why I describe it. So the harder you try, the worse things get. That's where you're in conflict, and somebody said they're in crisis. So stuck in a rut is like relationship Groundhog Day, where have the good times gone? It's like every day is the same thing. There's this rut. When it's good, we're happy and comfortable, but there isn't the magic. It's just good. And there's not those magical moments that make things great. So great is when we love each other and we consistently are creating magical moments. So Candace, can you relate to all five of these, and which one that have you been in all five?
Yes. And, I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and, everyone has their own level of comfort, right? And I think, especially right now with Corona, um, that monotony, for me, I get bored very, very quickly. But it's also like there is we often get stuck in relationships or stuck in places in our life. And we don't really notice or see it as a crisis.
Mm-hmm.
And we stay in it for long periods of time. So these are just really good self-awareness points, because for me, being stuck or stagnant in a relationship is like crisis. You know what I mean? That's just my perception.
Got it.
Yeah.
So there's five different things. And by the way, if people are interested in this and want to do more, at the end of it, if you're interested, I offer a breakthrough session with people where we get clear where you are, where you want to go, what needs to change, and is your relationship worth saving, or is your problems worth solving? So if you're watching this and you want to have a breakthrough session with me, you can put in breakthrough and then Paul. And if you want to have a different kind of breakthrough session, you can talk to Candace and she can help you from a feminine perspective. So if you're in crisis, we'll help you stop doing damage. Because what happens is a lot of times when we're in crisis, what we do is we end up doing more and more damage. And we got to learn how to stop doing that. When you're stuck in conflict, it's learning how to resolve the conflicts. When you're stuck in a rut, we teach you how to reawaken your dreams and enter the world of possibility. When you're in good and you want it to be great, you learn how to reawaken and create magical moments. And if you're great, you continue to stay grateful and vulnerable. All right, so here we go. Candace, I've got a picture of the three biggest relationship problems. And it's a triangle. And on the left side of the triangle is communication issues. On the right side is needs not met. And on the bottom is wounds not healed. And so what we're talking about today is what is it that takes a great relationship full of love, intimacy, connection, and erodes it and wrecks it and takes it from a great relationship to where you're losing the love of your life. So communication issues, needs not met, wounds not healed. Anything you want to say about that? We'll dive into each one of these individually in a second, but just the overall picture, Candace, do you want to touch on that?
Um, well, as I talked with you earlier, I'm exploring entering into a throuple or triad relationship. So I was picturing the triangle, and I was just like, yeah, the three of us need to just sit in the center of that triangle and all look at these points together.
Yeah. And so if we look at it, and what I want people to think about is what's caused the biggest problems in their relationships: communication issues, needs not getting met, wounds and not healed. So with Actually, before I go into communication, I am going to talk about something that we don't talk about that much. Needs. Because when we talk about needs, a lot of people, well, Candace, when you talk about your needs, what do some people say? You're being what?
Oh, needy.
Needy.
Yeah,
Now, is that a compliment?
no. Well, I'm trying to reframe.
Right. So if you think about it, I used to work for somebody that most people know, Tony Robbins. Um, and so one of the things Tony talked about is that the reason to be in a relationship is to meet one of 6 needs. Now, when I studied with a guy named Marshall Rosenberg, who's the head of who created nonviolent communication, he's no longer with us, but and there was hundreds of needs. So Candace, you may already know the answer because we've been on calls before together, but what is the single most important reason to be in a relationship?
To get your needs met.
And
Very human.
it's totally human. And there are going to be problems about even talking about our needs because we have need, shame, and all the rest of it. And what is the most important tool that we use to get our needs met?
Communication.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
Daniel, by the way, is saying, hi, Candace. So just you're getting a shout out.
Hi.
Okay. Anyway, so here's the deal. We're trying to get our needs met, and we have all these communication issues. So, number one, and what I want people to do is I'm going to number these. Which one causes the most problems for you in the world of communication? So, the number one issue that I have, and this is number one as a label, not as priority, but number one is not feeling heard, understood, or valued. And so, Candace, how important is it for you in a communication for you to feel heard, understood, and valued?
Very, 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 very important. Like there's many layers to that, but I think the essence of it is emotionally, you know. And we all feel heard, seen, and valued in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
But we all at a core, on an emotional human level, need, want, and desire this. My ways, especially as a blind person, may look very different than someone else's on how they get those needs met.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And somebody's saying very interesting, but I'm single. And here's the thing is if you're single and you don't want to be single, understanding these skills make you incredibly valuable in the world of singles. Like if somebody knows how to communicate in a way that both people end up feeling heard, understood, and valued, it's like, oh my God, it meets an incredibly precious need. And remember that that's what we're doing. We're doing everything to either avoid pain, gain pleasure. We're trying to meet our precious needs everywhere we go. So that's the challenge here. So if you look at it, we want to be, and I actually even, there's another triangle. We want to be heard, understood, and valued. So, Candace, you want to do that. Do you want to give that to the people you love and care about? You want them to feel heard, understood, and valued.
Mutuality, yeah. And learning how to create that for us.
So I'm asking you to take off your crown as a coach and be one of the participants from Facebook to represent them for a second. Which one do you think is the most challenging? Hearing somebody, understanding them, or valuing them? Which one causes the most problems? Because you said you wanted
Oh,
that, you want to give
yeah.
that.
So valuing, I would imagine, like, because we may have different values. Understanding could be another one because we have different perceptions.
So I'm going to tell you, from doing this for over 25 years, coaching couples from literally around the world, from India to Canada to Australia to England, understanding ends up being the big one, because we are afraid that if we understand you, it equals agreement.
Mm.
And so understanding doesn't equal agreement. And it's terrifying for somebody a lot of times to hear you and go, oh, I get it. Especially if what they're saying is, you don't love me. And you're going, yes, I do. No, you don't. And it's like, wow, can I enter your world and have you feel understood? You don't feel loved by me. Oh, that must really suck, to not feel loved by me, even though I'm trying really hard. And it's like, what I want people to do is, if you slow down and feed it back and give them that, because see, the next mistake, the first one, Candace, was not feeling heard, understood, valued. The second one is message sent is rarely the message received. So I could say, I love you, and my partner can hear that I'm just trying to get something from them. Or I can say a lot of different things. And what I want to do is, I want to check in with my partner. Can you tell me what you heard me say? So how often, Candace, do you think that messages are misunderstood?
A lot. There's a lot of miscommunication, or what I would also say is assumptive communication.
Yeah.
Like, even with like text language, like, and I'm
Oh,
so grateful
especially.
now. Yeah, now as a blind person, like, homie don't play that as much, which is cool because, oh, so much room for miscommunication there.
Yeah, and I just flashed on the screen just so you can see it. Alea Rose from it, I think she's in England, said, hi, Paul. Hi, Candace. So happy to be here. So I just wanted to send that out there. So the important thing that we learn in NVC, nonviolent communication, is it's the same thing you learn when you order pizza. So play with me on this one, Candace. Have you ever ordered food to go?
Yeah.
What's the last thing that they do before they hang up?
Mm, I don't know.
They repeat your order.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well,
So
there's some of the places, yeah.
almost, I would say 90% of the places that have been doing this more than a day repeat. So Candace, your phone number is this, your pizza is a 12-inch pepperoni, you want, your credit card is this. They feed it back because they know, one of the great quotes Marshall Rosenberg, the creator of nonviolent communication, said is, the normal outcome for most communication is misunderstanding. And so the pizza place, it costs them money each time there's a mistake.
Mhm.
So what do? They feed it back. In a relationship, which costs you heartbreak and hurt feelings and all the rest of it, we don't end up feeding it back. If you want to avoid miscommunication or you want to overcome it, what you do is you feed it back. So Candace, let me see if I heard you right. You said this. Let me hit, so I keep feeding it back. So that resonate.
Yes, and yes, it's really interesting because there's a pizza place that I order from that, oh my God, horrible customer service. But recently, the guy, it was entirely different. He repeated my order back. I was like, oh my God, thank you so much. Like, I know what I'm getting. I remember I literally had an experience that it was an entirely different experience.
So you felt
Same
heard,
place. Yeah.
understood, and valued. That's the key. So what I want to do is I want to ask people, what's the impact of in your relationship of not feeling heard, understood, and valued, and not having the message you sent be the message that they receive? This can destroy a good relationship. This can destroy relationships where you really love each other, but don't feel heard, understood, and valued. So I'm going to go to the third problem. And the big thing is communication issues. And so the first problem is not feeling heard, understood, and valued. The second one is message sent, not message received. And the third one is we communicate from three different places: our head, our heart, or our hurt. So, Candace, do you speak any other languages?
Mm-mm.
All right. Well, our head speaks one language, and that language is the language of facts, figures, logic, reason. Our heart speaks about feelings, needs, intimacy, connection. In our head, vulnerability is weakness and something to be avoided. In our heart, vulnerability is about courage and connection, and it's the key to great relationships. And in our hurt, which is when I'm pointing to the back, so put your hand on the back of your neck, that's your reptile brain. And when you're in your reptile brain, you're speaking in the world of loss and fear. And so when we're in our reptile brain, all we want to know is who's the enemy, who's the ally, who's safe, who's dangerous. And in a relationship, it's very black or white. You're either the enemy or the ally. If somebody comes home and says, my boss was such an asshole and I hate them, and your partner goes, well, your boss may have a point of view, what happens? Now, all of a sudden, you're not only is the boss the enemy, but your partner has took sides with the enemy, so they're now the enemy too. So, Candace, can you relate to speaking from your head, your heart, and I'm moving my hand. I'm putting my hand on my head, putting my hand on my heart, putting a hand on the back of my neck for my hurt. So
Mm-hmm.
what do you say about those three things?
Well, so I would have a tendency to do my head, my heart, and my hurt,
Mm,
because especially with my background and knowledge around tantra and the body and how we store things energetically, and like this being our power center.
mhm.
um our sexuality is the source of which we all come from, and this is where we were connected to our where we came from, and so our hurt, like, this isn't this is very natural and human. We all experience hurt, and so I'm thinking about the different tools, and I'm so grateful that we have these different tools, and that
So, Candace, wait,
sometimes.
let me dive in and just add, so I want to be careful about when I say the hurt. There's several layers of hurt. One is just in our feelings, and one is when we get triggered and we're in our reactive hurt. So
Mhm,
when I'm talking about the hurt, it's just not like I had my feelings hurt, but when I get the place of reactivity, and
mhm,
when I'm in the reactivity, I don't have the distinctions. I
yeah.
know all I have is enemy, ally. Mm, mm. Does that make sense? That's the hurt I'm talking about there, not just where I'm vulnerably connecting to my feelings.
Yeah, and no, like I think the reason what I was talking about is, for me, when I catch myself in that place,
Hmm.
I need to get into my body and
Yeah,
move, because my brain, I can't, I'm just like, my brain's already like, "Buh, buh, 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 buh," nothing's working.
yeah. And
Yeah.
just so you know, somebody's asking, what is your website? So
Me?
that, yeah, sure.
It is Temple of Frolic. Like temple, like the place you go for worship, and frolic, like we play.
So
.com.
templeoffrolic.com. Great.
Yes.
All right.
Cool. Thank you.
Cool. And I'm going to bounce back and I'm going to look at this. So what we want to do is we want to look, and we're either speaking from or listening from, we're either speaking from our head or our heart or our hurt, or we're listening from our head, our heart, or our hurt. When we're listening from our head, and this tends to be masculine, feminine. The masculine, and I'm not saying men or women, I have a masculine and feminine side. When I'm in my masculine side, I'm talking about facts and figures, or I'm listening to my partner for what are the facts, what problem are we solving, who did what, I'm trying to figure it out. Mm-hmm. Versus when I'm in my heart, how do I feel or how does she feel? And when I'm in my hurt, it's like, all right, where's the danger? Who's in trouble? Who did what? What does it need to feel safe? What do I need to feel safe? What does she need to feel safe? So these are simple, not easy. So I'm going to bounce over to the needs now. And three mistakes that come up, or three problems around needs. Number one is, and people could tell me which of them is the biggest impact. Actually, I'm going to bounce back. I'm sorry. I went back to communication issues. I just want to ask everybody who's watching in Facebook land, which one of these has the biggest impact on your life and in your relationships? Is it number one, where you don't feel heard, understood, or valued, or your partner doesn't? Number two, the messages sent are often the messages are not received. And number three, you're communicating from a place that's different than your partner. You might be speaking from your heart, they're listening from their head. Which one's causing the most problems in your relationship? If you could write in number 1, 2, or 3. The second question on that before we move on is, what would the impact be of dealing with this, of getting it so that actually both people felt heard, understood, and valued, so their message sent was your message received, and that you were able to communicate from all three of those, your head, your heart, and your hurt, and you could listen and meet your partner where they are. All right, so now I'm moving on to the next one, Candace. And we're talking about needs not met now. This is the right side of the triangle, and there's three problems, subsets of needs not getting met. Number one is there's three different levels that we deal with our needs. Needs shame, needs embarrassment, needs embrace. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that.
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just thinking, shame and embarrassment. Can you differentiate those two?
Totally. Okay. So shame to me is I have a need, and shame is when I don't feel like I feel like something's wrong with me for having the need. Mm-hmm. Embarrassment is I have a need. I want my need to get met, but I'm embarrassed to ask for it. And if you don't read my mind and meet my need without me having to ask, you don't love me. Mm-hmm. So shame is there's something wrong with me for even having a need. Embarrassment is I want my need met, and if you don't meet it, you don't love me. And then the third one is embrace. That's where we actually become comfortable, and that's the whole work that you and I help people do, is help people go from shame up to embarrassment to actually embracing their needs around intimacy or communication or support. So I'm guessing you've had to do some struggling with this because your needs have been intensified when you went blind.
Yeah. I'm redeveloping this for myself personally. I am used to having to do a certain amount of work around feeling emotionally needy. But now I have some realistic physical needs as a blind person. Um, and a sense of embarrassment and shame. I definitely have a new set of storylines around my needs as a blind person to work with. Like, I'm more work. That's one thing. I'm more work to be in relationship with
Mhm.
because of dot 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 with my blindness. Um, yeah, and yeah,
And most people can relate to you. They just, if they change it, not being, if they just took out the word blind, I'm more work to be in a relationship because of whatever it is, fill in the blank. With
mm,
with you, Candace, it might be easy to just go blind is the link. And for other people, it's like because I I had more need for sex than my partner. I had more need for help and support. It whatever it is, it's like where are they in relationship to their needs? So are they, that's number one. Number two is really a subset of that. But do your needs feel like they're a burden or do they feel precious? Do your partner's needs feel like they're burden or they're precious?
mm,
And I'm just going to put on here one person was saying it's difficult to dive into my heart, staying a lot between my head and my hurt. And that's Danielle. And I can so relate to that because for me, my safe place is my head, you know, and my most vulnerable place is my heart. All right. So how are you doing with yourself, with your own communication about your needs being a burden or you being a burden or your needs being precious? Because a lot of, well, I'll just let you answer that before I ask more.
yeah. So I'm working on the burden piece with my blindness. Um, precious. So one of the other things I thought of that, other people can possibly relate to that I've been doing all the, I feel good about, but I still work on my moon cycle, my monthly cycle as a female bodied person. Um, I see my needs and what happens to me and what happens to the feminine as like super celebratory and precious. And um, it's not always seen that way by others.
Mm-hmm.
And what comes through us during these times in our feminine life cycles. Um, yeah. So that is one area I feel like woohoo, but and then I know, other people with disabilities, the burden piece is tough.
Yeah. And I look at it this way we all have disabilities. Some of them are visible and some of them aren't. Our past habits, patterns, and beliefs, they can be incredibly disabling and incredibly invisible.
Mhm.
Blind is like, well, actually, I was going to say blind is very visible, but it's not. You don't. Some people don't know that you're blind and whatever, and so it's it's all of us wrestling with whatever disabilities that we have, and how do we dance with that? And just so you know, Alea said that this is to you, Candace. You are lovely to be around, Candace. Everyone is happy to help you, lovely one. So
Oh, thank
that's
you.
a shout out to you. So
And so just on that piece, uh, emotional IQ.
mhm.
This isn't, we are all able or not so able to meet one another in certain places emotionally or relationally. Doesn't mean right, wrong, good, bad, less than, more than.
Yeah,
It's Yeah, that's who we are.
And if the people you're around don't see their own needs as precious, they're not going to see your needs as precious. In fact, they'll often call you selfish or needy, or you're so full of yourself. It's like, who else should you be full of?
My
I
job.
want I want to be full of myself. I want to actually see myself as a, I want to, like, you have this your hat on, lucky lady, and it's like that's part of our job, is to feel lucky to be us.
That's
And
why I put this on for tonight with the topic. I was a little nervous, and so I was like, I'm lucky. Yeah.
and I have beautiful needs. Yeah. And it's like looking at that. And so number one is, when it comes to needs, is there, where are you now? Shame, embarrassment, embracing. And I have been doing this for a long time. And you know what? There's still days I go back into shame or embarrassment. I want my partner to read my mind, know what I want without me having to ask. And if I have to ask, it means they don't love me. Now, is that true? No, it's not true at all. They could be totally distracted. They could be whatever. It's like, it's learning how to be with this. And I want to go from needs feeling like a burden to feeling precious. Now, there's a third part to this one. So the third one is, if we can't name, well, actually, I have that wrong. It should be first notice, name, and negotiate needs. So first, even noticing that I have a need. And so there's these world of feelings, and feelings are designed to tell us whether or not our needs are being met or not. So if we get disconnected from our body, then we get disconnected from our needs. So what's your journey been in being able to notice, name, and negotiate your needs?
Um, you know, put blindness aside. Exactly what Paul said about being in your own body. And that's like, if you rewind to the beginning of the show, and I said about the beginning of my journey, um, if you experience trauma, it is very natural to leave your body. And it's very hard to know your own needs when you've dipped out, because being in here was way too much, because your needs didn't matter at one point in time in your life. And so you had to. So taking the time to be with yourself, whatever that means or looks like, doesn't have to look like what I do. I know Paul has a relationship with biking and going outdoors, um, like, to get really clear on what is our emotional needs, I think, are like the core of what we're talking about. Like, for me with the blindness, I'm still figuring out. I don't know how to get my blind needs met still. This is a logistical thing, but still, even with that, on an emotional level, does it feel better to fight hard to get help from the government, or try to find people I'm in alignment with and do beautiful service exchange?
Mm-hmm. And find a
Yeah.
way to meet their precious needs, and
Mhm. Yeah.
so that it all works out. So
Yes.
it's like, what has to happen? Well, it doesn't have to happen. You could spend a lot of your life without it, but learning to name needs so that you have a conversation. It's like having the different palette, different colors on your, if you're doing art, for the palette, so that when I work with couples, I help them go through and discover their top three needs. Now, there's a list of 10 needs that I go through. That's the training wheels, those top 10. And then they pick their top three needs, and then they let their partner know. And I just got off the call with a couple from Midwest just before I got on here, talking about what are the top three needs that you can meet for your partner that would make them feel really loved and adored. And having this common language makes it so much easier for them to be happy in this relationship. All right. So, what I'd love to hear from people is which one's the most challenging when it comes to needs? Is it the shame, embarrassment, embrace? Is it feeling like your needs are a burden versus precious? Are you can't even notice them, name them, or negotiate them? Which one of these three is the biggest problem, and what's the impact? So if you're either writing it in the comments or writing it on your own sheet of paper,
Or or like, what needs do you notice you have a harder time communicating into? Is it logistical? Is it your emotional needs? Is it your physical or sexual needs? Because sometimes we have like we're better in one area or another. And why? Do you even know?
I'll just give people a quick idea of some of the needs. So there's needs for certainty in a relationship. Can I trust you? Like the reason that we're able to drive down the highway, I was driving earlier at 55 miles an hour, and cars coming at me at 55 miles an hour. And the only thing separating us is this white line in the middle of the road that we have this agreement. You're going to stay on your side. I'm going to stay on my side. That's what allows me to have certainty and drive this white line that is painted on the road. Otherwise, we have a collision that can be deadly easily. So certainty is one. The next one is for variety. Candace brought up earlier, she gets bored easily. So she has a strong need for variety. So we need to have a relationship that mixes certainty. Another need, variety. Another need is to feel significant and like a priority. So there's three of them. A need for love and connection. That's number four. A needs for intimacy, and three different types of intimacy: a need for physical, emotional, and sexual intimacy, a need for growth, a need for contribution, a need for attraction. So those are some of the top needs, and looking at what they are and talking about them and being able to tell your partner, go, I have a precious need for this. Would you be willing to do something for that? Or asking your partner, what are your precious needs? So we're going to bounce now to the third area that creates huge problems in relationships. And this one is wounds not healed. Now, everybody that's ever had your heart broken, raise your hand. If you've had your heart broken more than once, raise both hands. I've had my heart broken so many times. Now, the thing is, we all get wounded. And what Carolyn Mays said, who is a great healer, says we all get wounded. Some of us get bitter. Some of us get better. And so what happens when we don't heal our wounds, we become less and less available. So, Candace, let me ask you a question. I don't know if you know about this or not. Do you know what the term bioavailability means in the world of vitamins? So vitamins, in the world of vitamins, bioavailability is how much of a vitamin your body can absorb. And sometimes if you mix certain vitamins, you can absorb more, and sometimes you can absorb less. So the whole idea is, how do you make vitamins the most available to your body? Does that make sense in vitamins?
Mm-hmm.
So in the world of relationships, I came up with this term, relationship availability. How available are you to be in a relationship? And in the beginning of this call, you were talking about, like, not really, don't be in a relationship with me. I'm not that available. I'm whatever it is, wounded, hurt, upset, not, so when we're looking at being in a relationship with somebody, three core areas I go over is, are they available? And that means emotionally, physically, mentally, are they available? If they're stuck in the past and haven't healed their wounds, you could really love them. They could really love you, but they're not available. And so, Candace, let me ask you, have you ever been in a relationship or tried to be in a relationship with someone who wasn't available?
Yeah, lots, many. That's I don't know what it is, but yeah.
And what does that feel like?
Um, it's painful. I think initially what happens for me, because I have this strong service giver orient, and one of my challenges is, it's easier for me to be the giver and be the teacher. I end up going there, but it's draining. It's draining.
Yeah, and it's tough because it's like if they're only 20% available, you're trying to put the other 80% in, and they're stuck
Oh,
in the past. And it's like they're not allowing themselves to be, I call it, well, actually, I borrowed this from Alison Armstrong, VV, voluntarily vulnerable. Alison Armstrong, amazing relationship coach.
mhm.
So, are people available? If they're not available, they're stuck in the past. And then what happens is if they haven't healed, they become this is the second thing. So the number one in wounds is not available. Number two is triggerable. And triggerable, I broke my hand a couple of years ago, went over the handlebars mountain biking and landed on my face and my hand. My face, well, you can decide whether it's damaged or not, but my hand was broken. Anyway, for months, if anybody even touched my hand, I went into reaction. And so, how much fun is it talking to someone who is really triggerable when you talk to them about tough issues? So, that's a question, Candace.
Yeah, there's not really communication happening when someone's, I would say, like in that, I used to be one of these people. I used to call myself an atomic reactor. It was like there was no tick, 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 boom, it tick, boom. That's it.
Yeah. So, triggerable, can't talk about tough issues. And see, it's a dance because I don't want to claim like that I have arrived and you could talk to me about anything at any time. I just spent I just went through 9 hours of not all at once, but sometimes 2 hour, 3 hour sessions of getting coached in a particular area with my beloved about areas where I am totally triggerable. So it's like learning where we're triggerable and then getting coaching around it, getting mentoring around it, not expecting yourself to instantly not be triggerable, but start to really, it's like going to the gym. You start building your muscles. And to have conversations about tough issues, you need to build your communication muscles so you become less and less triggerable and come more from your heart than your hurt. That,
And
go ahead.
I was saying, and just knowing your triggers and having triggers doesn't mean there's something wrong with you.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to communicate, hey, honey, so for me, as someone who had a lot of trauma, I had, especially around sexuality and intimacy, I had some stuff. And we weren't going to be able to go to some really beautiful places together if I couldn't communicate that. And so it's very important to know these things and to communicate what these triggers are.
Yeah. And Candace, that was beautifully said. It's, and I want to, hear from people. Can you relate to it? We all have triggers.
Mm-hmm.
We all have wounds. We all have places where we're not available or only slightly available. So it's like doing dances with it and being able to tell your partner when you're starting to get triggered to catch it early on. I'll give you one other tip on this before we go to the last one. Um, there's a, there was a book out, Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. And what I say is that they were wrong. And I say that lovingly, but I think it's important to catch it when it's small rather than wait till it gets big. It's easier to deal with an acorn than an oak tree. So, what causes people to blow up when you said go atomic or all the rest of it is when they don't feel heard and they need to, all of a sudden, they get to blow up. If somebody is meeting your needs or you feel heard, understood, and valued, you don't have to yell. Like when you're in bed with your lover at night and they're looking in your eyes and they're waiting for your next words, you don't yell at them, you whisper. The only time we yell is when we don't feel heard. And so it's important to be able to go, honey, I have an acorn. When you looked at that guy that way, when you said you were going to do the dishes and you didn't do the dishes, when you know, didn't help me, or you were an hour late and you didn't call, it really triggered my fear, and I created this story that you don't love me or you don't care about me or your word doesn't matter. It's like, it's this really, it's a vulnerable dance that creates immense intimacy. And somebody's asking, and we can both answer this and go through. It says, what is the best thing to do if we find out somebody's wounded? Well, if they're breathing, they're wounded. If they're alive on the planet, they're wounded. What's really good is to be able to, like Candace was saying, it would be interesting to go on a date with Candace, and if she didn't tell you she was blind, you'd be like, "Oh, what the heck? What? Something's not right here."
It's happened.
Right. So it's like when we can identify our wounds and make friends with them, and then we can tell our partner, you know what? I went through sexual abuse. I went through like being betrayed. I went through this. So in my relationship, I'm more sensitive there. Like I broke my hand right now. You see the splint? That means this is going to be really tough to touch. We're not going to do a lot of things where this hand gets used. Now, this hand is fine now, but it wasn't for a while. So it's good to let somebody know so nobody's surprised. All right. So we're going to bounce to the last one. And it's constant conflicts. That's where issues get recycled. And if we get wounded and we're not available and we're constantly triggerable, what ends up happening is we don't get to talk through issues and things end up feeling like there's constant conflict and misunderstanding, and it destroys intimacy and destroys trust. So number 1 was not available. Number 2 was triggerable. Number 3 is constant conflict. Anything to say about that, Candace, before we kind of bring this to wrap this up?
I think the big thing I'm thinking about is how natural all of this is. Like, this is a part of the human experience. This is a part of relationships, whether you relate to the word trauma or to my experience or to Paul's. Like when you say acorn, for me, there was a time in my life where cowboy hats triggered me. I could not have those around me. And so, would you not want to pursue being in a relationship with me just because you really love cowboy hats? Would you, like if it's something that, so just knowing these little things. And for me, saying that can feel embarrassing or stupid. It's only a cowboy hat. You should get over that. No, no. If it's a big deal, it's a big deal.
And we all have our cowboy hats. Whatever, we all have things that trigger us that don't make sense to anybody else, but because of something that happened in our lives or some association, we have these traumatic things. So what I want people to look at is, I'm going to bring up a slide that basically shows all of them. These are the three big problems: communication issue, needs not getting met, wounds not healed. And when all three of them get together, there's a perfect storm. And what I want you to do is realize that this relationships, if you want a remarkable relationship, you need remarkable relationship skills. Most relationships don't end because of a lack of love. They end because they run into one of these problems and they don't have the skill sets to deal with them. And if you want the skill sets, it takes effort. It's like if you want to play the piano, what do? You get a mentor, you get a coach, and you practice and practice and practice. You want to become a better golfer, you want to become a better doctor, attorney, whatever it is. You learn from somebody who can help you master these skills. If you want to learn these skills, one of the ways you can do it is through Candace. Candace already gave her website. What is it? Frolicking?
Oh, yeah. So the website is Temple of Frolic. And I also have a show, Fun Frolicking Friday. Right now
Oh,
it's at
wait. So slow it down, because if they're writing down, we only want one of those.
templeoffrolic.com.
Okay. Get a hold of Candace, Temple of Frolic. This is my book that I wrote, Argue Less, Love More, became a #1 bestseller in 5 different areas: counseling, marriage therapy. I mean, counseling, couples and family therapy, marriage, healthy relationships. And I didn't even know there was an area for dysfunctional relationships. My video at one point was seen by 5 million people. Now it's been seen by over 6 million people. Here is my invitation. If this wakes you up and you want to do something about this, here is my invitation. Come and spend, and it's really probably more like 30 minutes to 45 minutes together. It's complimentary. And what we do is get together, and this is especially for couples. We get together and look at what are your dreams, what are your desires in a relationship, what's your current reality, and what are the roadblocks. And you walk away from this session. A lot of times people say they get more from this 45 minutes than they do from months and months of therapy. And we look at it and get clear, what's your plan? And then if you want help implementing it, am I a good fit? Am I somebody you want to work with? So if that's something you want to do, you can do one of two things. You can put breakthrough right in the comments here, and I will send you a link. We can have a conversation and see if it's a fit. Or you can go to arguelesslovemore.net/clarity, because it's all about getting clear. And you can set up a session there. So in closing, what would be really helpful for me, and I think for Candace, we both have this beautiful need to contribute. What I would love to see is, what did you get from today? And by the way, Valerie asks, is it possible to repair a relationship that has all of these issues and aspects? It's possible. It's not easy. I'm working with a couple from across the ocean that they had been together for almost 20 years, and they started with they had 9 main areas that were not working, and they've had such huge breakthroughs. It's been amazing.
One of the things I want to say, we're saying about repair or broken and using these very definitive lines. And when relationships, I like thinking of the word relation shifting, because maybe just the box that we were in that relationship wasn't working. Doesn't mean the relationship itself is broken or needs repair. Maybe you just need a new set of tools. Maybe, so I think there's that other piece. We sometimes look at relationships in that way of like, oh, is this gonna stay or is this gonna go? Like, well, can we come back to love and maybe try a new way of relating?
Absolutely. So thank you, Candace. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Um, this is the Courageous Love Show with Paul Sterling, your host, me. And I do this every Thursday at 6:05 West Coast time and every Sunday at 4:05 West Coast time. And if you go to in Facebook land, Facebook group Love by Design, you can join the group and look at the past issues, the back issues of these calls. And there's a wide variety of amazing interviews and conversation. Thank you, Candace. Thank you, all my viewers. Have a